Hello, and welcome back to our week 3 of our love and relationship series. My name is Tamika Sally, and I'm joined with my handsome husband,
Travis Sally.
and we're your hosts. We also have 4 lovely couples with us that are also our co hosts. Today's session will be covering Oh, You Mad? Conflict resolution, fighting fair. So I'm sure that today's conversation will be very interesting. This series is sponsored by the Women of Destiny of Bible Way Ministries International here in Atlanta, Georgia. And so we'll get started with introducing our couples for today. So we have Danny and Latanya.
Hey everybody, I'm Latanya Wade, and this is
Danny Wade.
and we have 2 kids, and we are in Atlanta, Georgia.
Great. And Tony and Sherry.
Uh, Hello, everyone. I'm Tony Glenn. We've actually been married for going on 10 years, and this is my wife.
Sherry, Glenn. We're a blended family of 6. And wow, grandkids. We live in Atlanta, Georgia as well.
Great. Sarai and Pat.
So I am Sarai Rump, and this is Patrick Rump. We have been married for almost 8 years, and we have a almost 2-year-old daughter, and we are in Houston, Texas.
Great. And last but not least, we have Michael and Cashmere.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Wilkerson,
I'm Cashmere Wilkerson.
and we are in Dayton, Ohio. We've been married for 8 years, and we have 2 children, and it's going good.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, we're going to jump right into our conversation. And so this week we're talking about fighting fair, conflict resolution. And so oftentimes you hear the cliche of communication is key, and whatever that means to anyone else, because that could mean so many different things. So as we kind of start this conversation, I want to start at a ground level and talk about the type of communicators we are. Whether you are a land the plane kind of person, you're just trying to get to the destination as quick as possible, or are you kind of a enjoy the ride kind of person? You like to stop and smell the roses. Like it's all about getting to the enjoyment of getting to this destination, like enjoying the ride of getting there, which is kind of a stark difference from the land the plane kind of person, because they just want to get there. They don't want any fluff in between. I think I best heard it described years ago that some like headlines, and then some like all of the, is it like the subtext or something like that? It was like men like headlines, women like subtext or something like that. It is kind of sort of the same thing. So I want to know about your communication styles, and we can get into the whole conflict resolution part, but oftentimes it starts with the way that we communicate with each other. So I'm going to start with Sarai and Pat. What are you two? Are you a land the plane, enjoy the ride kind of person when you're communicating? How does that go?
Well, I am a land the plane kind of person. Like I want to talk about the problem that we have right away.
Yeah.
I want a solution right away. um, I can wait. Or I'm working on having patience. Like to take the time to think about it and analyze everything. And I just want to, have a solution immediately. Talk to me right away. So of course, that's something that I have been working, and I think I'm getting better, but it's like a work in progress.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
I'm very direct as well in my communication. I don't like to go through all the details, because sometimes you like to go through details and things like that. But I'm very direct. Here's what you did. Here's where you messed up. And this one I didn't like it.
Oh my goodness.
We're not gonna get into all the details. This simple thing. You did this, so that's why I didn't like it. And then also, you talked Tamika about how we grew up and stuff like that. But it's just like when I shut down, I'm shut down, and I don't want to talk about nothing. So I'm direct when I'm direct, but when I'm shut down, I'm shut down.
Yeah.
And does that, but when you shut down, do you feel like that serves you well? Is that a way of kind of protecting yourself, and do you circle back? Like, how do you kind of move forward with addressing it?
Well, we had a tool, you talked about tools. A consultant was telling us that when I get to that point, so I might not know that I get to that point, even though I'm showing all the signs. Don't touch me, stop talking to me. Why are you talking to me? And I go somewhere else, follow me there. It's like you're poking the bear. To the point where I'm just about to blow my top.
Uh-huh.
And so a consultant suggested that I just say, hey, time out. I need a timeout from you. Because that's indication that you are about to push me over the edge.
Uh-huh.
Then my responsibility is, all right, you're on timeout. I will come back to you in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
An hour and a half. When I come back from doing whatever it is I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that puts the accountability on me to tell her when I can come back and when when we can have the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good that you give a date or a time, because especially for the person who wants to address as quickly as possible, they need to feel like we both are invested in resolving this. So if you tell the person who is not invested, but the person who wants to hurry up and land that plane, a date and time that gives them something to, okay, I can hold for that. If you just kind of say, I can't talk about this right now, we'll talk about it later. When is later? Mm-hmm. Later could be next week. I don't know your later. I need a date later. Like that doesn't necessarily work for the person who wants to land the plane. So we're going to get into kind of more of that as well as we talk about some of the techniques. But before I get too far down the road on that, I'm going to ask Michael and Kashmir, what is your communication style? Land the plane, enjoy the ride.
And the plane.
You got a high five to Sarai.
I don't want to spend a lot of time going over every single detail of why we got to where we got. Look, we got here. This is the cards we have. Let's get to the point. Why are you mad at me? Here's why I'm mad at you. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. But as kind of like Patrick said, I do have those moments where I shut down. It's like, all right, leave me alone. I need to process this. And I think that's more of what it is. It's just processing it and then trying to make sure I come back and then I can address it, because sometimes I just need to know, okay, what are all my thoughts? I need to piece them together.
Yeah.
I like to land the plane.
Yeah. And Michael?
Mine depends on if I'm in trouble or not. But it's something wrong. We're not landing the plane. We about to go around this. So I usually try to land the plane. I usually try to get to what the issue is. I more so want to solve it right then. So that can turn into more than it needs to be sometimes. Because I don't like to. My biggest thing used to always be, we're not going to go to bed mad. We're not, don't let the sun go down.
Go down on that raft, honey.
So we got to get this right away. That doesn't work all the time. You got to be able to do both. So I'm definitely a land the plane, but I have learned, especially like she said, when she's like, look, I'm not going to give you an answer right now. We can't get to the solution. I've learned to go a different route at times, and find different ways that she wants to be communicated to versus how I am communicating. So that's why I say more so it depends on the situation sometimes.
Yeah.
That's really good, because I've adapted some of the things that he does too. So we kind of play off of each other a little more. I still am more land the plane, but at times I try to be conscious of what's going on so that I can be fair.
Yeah. That's a good assessment. That's a good assessment, or a fair assessment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Tony and Sherry, what communicator are you? Are you a land the plane or enjoy the ride?
I think I'm a very direct land the plane kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I think he may feel like at times it's the exact opposite. sometimes, he wants to determine when the conversation ends. And that doesn't bode well. But I think I'm gonna land the plane. I'm pretty direct, I think so.
Yeah, I'm definitely land the plane. I think the looks I'm giving is because she's very detail oriented. So she may want to land the plane, but she's going to tell me about the clouds on the way.
And that's okay. There's details and stuff you need to know.
Yeah, and I think I also, and I said the land the plane kind of person, because sometimes when things happen, I'm like, you know what, we're not gonna. I can't talk to you about this right now. And it doesn't even bother me to like let it go. It used to be at the beginning of our marriage. It's like, I want to talk about it right now. Let's go ahead and resolve it. What's the problem? You don't like me? What's going on? But now it's like, I know when to kind of give him his space, and I appreciate when he gives me mine.
So we're learning. We're improving those things. So yeah, we're both now kind of, let's get to the point. This is the issue. How can we fix it? And if we need to come back, we do. So we're on the same page now. It's been a struggle for a minute for her.
We're definitely gonna talk about it, but we're gonna circle back and talk about it when we at a point when we can
be calm and rest. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's a good one. And Danny and Latanya, the same question: land the plane or enjoy the ride?
Well, I thought I was a land the plane type of person, but I think sometimes kind of like Sherry, I think he thinks that I'm a enjoy the ride type of person because I may give a lot of details. I'm detail oriented as well. And so, I just feel like I need to get it all out. Hey, how did we get to this point? Like I'm just putting it all out there. But eventually I feel like I'm going to land the plane. And then sometimes he's like, let me stop you right there. Hold on, let me stop you right there. So that's what I know. He's like, hey, you've been going on a long time with this. So, I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I definitely say that I know that I'm a land the plane kind of person. And one of the most dreaded words that I could hear is,
let's talk.
We'll just talk about it later.
Oh,
and then later becomes, I'm like, okay, you ready to talk about it now? The next day, and it's like, no, we'll just talk about it later. So, but one thing I've learned, just like a lot of you, I think Soraya mentioned it too. I think I've learned more to switch from a fighter jet to a 300 passenger. So I'm a little bit slower now. Patience is one of those things that I didn't have coming into the relationship, and she's helped me very well with that. I've learned to be patient, but I know that I'm a kind of land the plane kind of person, and also detail oriented, but just wanting to get down to the goal and solution, and want to solve it right then and right there and right now, and try not to let it linger. And as she goes, the point about the conversation is, she can kind of have a whole lot of things that I want to address, like she will, put, 3,000 words into a conversation that's like, okay, I got to address that and that and that and that and that. So that's not coming with, wait a minute, because I make sure I don't want to miss anything. I'm like, well, let me stop you right there so I can address these first 20 things before you add, the others. But I think that with time we've learned, our communicating skill, and we both learned that, we have 2 ears for a reason, and 1 mouth. But I can tell you that my patience has improved a whole lot. Hopefully she'll agree. Because I want to solve things right there, right now, and right away. But I've gotten a little bit better. So, I think I'm probably, Tamika, I say I'm even in a helicopter right now, more so than a plane. Every now and then I'll hover over a little bit. Yeah. I'm still up in the air though.
I think that's an interesting question for me to answer.
Absolutely.
Because I think I could vacillate between either one of those, depending on the situation. So if we're talking about no conflict involved, just regular communication, I can be very much so to the point. I think when I'm asking a question or wanting to know about something getting done or whatnot, I'm straight to the point. But as I've told Travis before, most people know me as pretty much a bottom line person, but I can be my most girl self with Travis, which involves a little bit of that kind of enjoying the ride, and it drives him nuts. And I am aware of it, but I am thankful that he lets me kind of go on, because the thing is, sometimes I'm processing something that I'm telling him and I just need to say it, and he just happens to be there. And I'm going to go ahead and start talking. And to him, it makes it seem like we're going on a ride. And I guess technically he is in my mind. He's going on a ride with me in my mind as I'm trying to get all this stuff out. And then I may answer the question anyway. So I didn't really need him, but I did need him. And so.
So how that balloon, it's not going far, but it's up there and it's not coming down.
Yeah. And then when I'm finished, and it's like, okay, we can come back. And then there are other times when we are just talking and I'll ask him a question, and to me, he's taking too long to respond. And I'll start to talk. He was like, can you let me answer? And I'm like, what is up with these pregnant pauses? I didn't know. I thought I was finished. So it's just, so we go. So I can be very much so land the plane, but I'm also, depending on the situation, can be, let's enjoy this ride as I brain dump. You agree?
Absolutely. Yes. I am by nature a fixer.
Mm-hmm.
Want to fix it, but I do have the ability to see when there's not going to be a conversation this time.
Yeah.
And I let it be. And I know me as well. I got to make sure, not to make sure I'm choosing my words properly, but sometimes just talking in the heat of the moment is not a wise thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also have to get my law books out so I can make sure I'm ready for this debate.
I ain't gonna debate you, but I might, I might be like Clara Huxtable, let the record show, and then go through, But
I was talking right there.
That was a pause. Y'all didn't see that pause?
That was a pregnant pause?
That's a pregnant pause right there.
So, yes, I'm very direct. We got to land the plane. Just the facts, Jack. I don't need all the flowers, the music, the violins. Just tell me what's going on.
Yeah.
What can I fix? And I mean, that's the way I'm wired. What can I fix? What did I do? Do I think I did what you said I did?
Oh, that's a good one. Because oftentimes perspective is key. You tell me something how I said
I didn't pause right then.
Okay. Y'all about to see this play out real life.
So, did I think I did what I'm being told I did? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I need to think about it. But is it time to apologize? And sometimes I may know that I was wrong, but in that moment, I'm not gonna give you the satisfaction of that apology right there.
You see that?
You want me to lie? I'm not gonna lie to the folks. We are gonna tell the truth and shame the devil. So, I mean, sometimes it's really like that, and you can't tell me you don't do it either.
Oh, I know I do.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm gonna land the plane, and we're not talking about flowers, we're not talking about landing gear, we're not talking about your connected flight.
Yeah.
We're not talking about none of that. Let's to the point.
Yeah. So oftentimes we are shaped by our childhood. Everything seems to go back to that. So I want to know, how were arguments, disagreements modeled for you growing up? What did that look like for you, whether it was in your home or just your circle of friends or circle of peers, whatever it might be from your childhood? If you had to think back, how were disagreements handled? What would you say? How would you say they were handled if you had to think back? And I'll start with Danny and LaTanya.
Yeah, I can start. I thought about this and growing up in my parents' home for many years, I thought that they never argued. I've never seen it, but I found out later that they did disagree, but they just didn't do it in front of us. And I'm the oldest of four. And I remember one time we were little, and this kind of goes with how we were raised too. My mom was Methodist, my dad was Baptist, and we rotated going to different churches. So this is explaining to me why I was very confused, you know. And there was a time, and like I said, the oldest, and my dad, he wasn't always saved, but he was always like, "Oh, y'all going to church? You know, you make sure you go to church." We go with mom. Mom was going to both churches back and forth, and my dad, he would go every now and then. And so one of the days, and this is a disagreement that my siblings and I said, you know what, we're not gonna go to church today. So I said, okay, all right, y'all sure? I said, okay. So my mom is always the one getting us dressed. So we said, yeah, Mom, we're not gonna go to church today. She said, oh, okay, y'all not going today? Okay, let me go and let your dad know. You know, so we still like, you know, well, we wait and see what dad, you know, but when we heard his footsteps, those hard shoes, those church shoes, and we know that he was going to church. Yeah, we took off running. We got dressed for church, you know, we was upset with mom because, you know, she said she didn't even tell on us. She said, you know, she just went down there and he asked if we were dressed yet, and she said, well, they said they're not going, and he didn't say anything to us. But we knew that when he came down that hallway, it was not going to be nice. But that just kind of goes to show you, growing up, you know, we would try to sometimes play the role of, you know, we would ask mom sometimes because we know we'd get a yes out of mom.
Yeah.
But mom would always be like, go ask your dad, you know. And then sometimes we like, you know, we would say dad said yes, even though he didn't. But she was checking and confirming. And then if dad didn't say yes, we got in double trouble. Because it was like we were trying to play them against each other, you know. So they were very strategic in that. And I learned a lot. That's the lesson I took, you know, from my childhood, is that when you're not united front, you know, it really makes a difference in your upbringing and even the children, you know. So I was like, Mom, why y'all don't argue? She said, oh yeah, we argue. You know, I mean, they did it behind closed doors. And, you know, when they disagreed or whatever, you know, they just came together and, you know, it was like nothing happened. But, you know, with us, you know, when we first got married, you know, and we had disagreements and, you know, I mean, she had this gift of not being able to talk to me for 2 or 3 days. That was, and I'm trying to land the plane and, you know, it was a challenge, you know. She was gifted at being able to. I'm like, how long is this gonna go on for? You know, I'm like, so it was just, but you know, a lot of that was like, you know, it's not a good time. She wanted to get herself together, and me, and maybe she saw something in me where it's like, you know what, I'm not gonna bother kind of trying to talk to him because he's gonna interrupt me anyway, you know. But we've come together and learned a lot about the importance of listening and being on one accord, even with, you know, our children who are 8 and 2, you know, we see them modeling, you know, like what we do, they do with each other, you know.
Absolutely.
That was a long story.
And he was in the helicopter.
This is from the Land the Plane guy. But, so growing up, I think similar to him, I didn't see my parents argue a whole lot. I know that they did, but I never heard any yelling or fussing and cussing and all that. So when we got married, like, I don't think I really knew necessarily how to argue correctly, if that's the right way to say it. So at first, I mean, it was just awful. Like those first 2 years, woo! I didn't think we was gonna make it. Like, so slamming doors, you know, leaving the house, just going off for a drive, yelling, fussing, cussing, everything you it wasn't just me. I did a lot of it, but I was not the only one. I was not the only one, y'all.
She was modeling behavior. You know, I was trying to see if it worked.
So, yeah, there's a lot that we have, thank the Lord, grown from. So, now we try to do a better job of listening and just trying to put ourselves in the other person's shoes, having empathy.
Yeah,
I think that's about it.
That's good. And you brought up something about not knowing how to argue correctly. And I think that goes into, which we're going to talk about some of those techniques about active listening, because sometimes we're listening to respond more so than listening to the person and what they're actually saying. It's almost like playing double dutch and you just waiting for a chance to jump in.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, I was cutting him off earlier. You just waiting to just jump in so you can get your point across. Because sometimes in the heat of the moment, we feel like we're so right. We're just trying to shut you down even more because you won't get this right point. All right.
Exactly.
I'm right. This is why. And we're going to come to an agreement as to why I'm right. And you don't have a say in this. And that's not active listening. It's not fair. And again, you're on the same team. So it's not really going to work if one of you loses, because if one lose, you both lose.
Yeah.
So that doesn't really serve you well.
Yeah, it took us a long time to, I think, realize that we're on the same team. Because it was just like, and you just like, you know, whose team? We're on the same team, but we finally, praise God, realized that we were on the same team.
Yeah, you don't want to just be a fighter jet. You don't want to just be a helicopter. Right. You definitely don't want to be a bomber.
No.
Blow some stuff up. I'm ready. Let's do this. Absolutely. Pat and Sarai, how about you guys? Childhood, how has it shaped your, how did you see disagreements modeled?
Well, growing up with my parents, I did see them argue. I mean, we did see them argue, especially like in the car, because my mom, she tell my dad how to drive all the time. And so I saw it, and they both speak their mind, and they both like solve it right there and then. Sometimes it might take a while, right? If it depends on how bad it was, it might take a while. Not all the arguments we heard, but like a few we definitely see how, you know, how they talk to each other, how they communicated. And that's how I learned. So I definitely speak my mind, and I say, you know, maybe I say too much sometimes, but I speak, you know, I'm telling how it is, right? I'm talking about so yeah, that's how I apply it, you know.
Straight up. So in my household growing up, we would get upset with each other and we wouldn't talk to each other for like days. So kind of like Latanya, like, we ain't talking to you. I can go days without talking to you. I'm good. I'm working to try to get over that, because with my mom, like, she's a ICU nurse. She's been an ICU nurse for as long as I can remember. She worked nights. So I wouldn't see her. We would get into it. Wouldn't talk to her, get home from school. She'd be sleeping, get up. I'm out in the streets hanging with my friends. At my grandmother's house. And my brother and I, man, we used to give each other the blues. You know, we wouldn't talk to each other for like a long time, and then something would pop up like, hey, you want to do this? All right. So it's kind of like one of those things, is like, you know, the time kind of made the situation better. And it's kind of like, okay, we kind of understood where we may have stepped over the line or things like that. But I know now, as like Sarai wants to get stuff done and over with, I'm like, look, don't get me to that point. Don't get me to that point. All right, I'm at that point, and I'm not talking to you for like 3-4 days.
Is that the gift that Danny was talking about? The gift, you had that gift.
The gift.
So in a nutshell, that's basically it. I mean, kind of like I've gotten better with it, you know, talking to the marriage consultant and things like that, getting other tools and perspectives, and really seeking to understand why she's feeling this way and stuff like that. But God's still working on me. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I think we can all maybe attest to that. And that's the one thing about it. It doesn't stop. As soon as you think that, you know, you've gotten something covered, the problem is we evolve and we change. over time too. So things that used to get to us don't anymore, and the things that didn't get to us now do. So we're constantly having to shift gears, and it's like, why are you mad about that? Well, I don't know, but I know I am now, and I don't like it, and I'm letting you know. So it's the same thing. But it seems like because we are all mostly our land the plane kind of people, I don't think any of us have an issue with speaking up about the things that do bother us or don't bother us. So that's pretty good. So Michael and Cashmere, how about you guys? How were disagreements modeled?
Well, for me, it was kind of a hybrid for my parents. My mother was more of the submissive type, so she would just kind of sweep things under the rug. It's just, don't start nothing, won't be nothing, just move on. That didn't happen. And my father was more of maybe the outspoken, explosive, let's talk about it, this is how I feel and this goes type. So for me, it was just kind of a hybrid. And, you know, as I grew up, I kind of adopted maybe some of both of those, honestly. It's like when I'm mad, I'm mad. And when I don't want to be bothered, I don't want to be bothered. So that is something that, honestly, I've learned a lot from my husband about, in just being able to articulate myself. Because I think that's part of the whole just sweeping things under the rug, is not understanding how to articulate yourself and to say, you know, or explain it in such a way that you're getting across what you mean. So those are things that I've kind of adopted as I'm now in my adult life, I'll say. But yeah, it was kind of a hybrid for me.
For me, it was, so I was raised by my mother and grandmother, who have two completely different forms of communicating. My grandmother is very much a leave it all to Jesus and it's gonna be all right. And we're not gonna talk about this. You're gonna just move on. And we're not gonna talk about this. That way. And it was, you know, her way goes and that's it. But everything else, whether it's conflict, good, bad, whatever, we're not gonna talk about it. I don't care if you're hurt, whatever, we're gonna keep moving. My mother is like, no, this we about to, either we gonna talk about this or we throwing hands, one of the two. Because we about to we about to have this out, or she has to walk away. And so I think that's where, like, so I got married and I would tell her, like, I kind of had to, it wasn't because I adopted those styles to get things accomplished in my house. I had to do both. I had to be able to be very, with my grandmother, be very like, okay, strategic. This is what she's going to say. This is how she's going to want it. But my mom, it was no, you don't have time to wait and come back. And if you don't say it now, you're not getting whatever it was. So I had to learn those and put those into, you know, into marriage, into how I communicated as an adult. But as I got older, I was very much more as my mother, because I was so, as my grandmother's style was very much, don't say much, just keep going, you know, put God first and just keep going. So as I got older, you know, you started, you know, backslide a little bit, and you know, it's not about to be a problem. Being like too many years, I gotta let it all out. And when I met Cashmere, I always tease her, and people around us would always tell her, you know, we would go through rocky period or something. He would always tell her and me, "You're gonna be with Cashmere because she's the only one
that's gonna put up with that.
You know, she's the only one that can calm you. She's the only one that can do that no matter what it is." And that's kind of what's all with her. I'm soft. I'm like, well, just tell me what's wrong. Yes. And my friend's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like,
that's that love.
I can't sleep. I can't eat. If I don't know, I'll be up at 3 o'clock in the morning. She goes, what's wrong? I need to know what the problem is. That's how it's adopted.
That is sweet. That is too sweet. Travis, would you sleep, not sleep? No, that's another thing that makes me mad. He goes straight to sleep. If we're in the middle of an argument and then he's like, we got to talk about it later, he go to sleep and look like he rested. Like, well, it takes everything out of me not to go over there and just snatch the pillow. Like, we not through.
You gotta wake up.
Tony and Sherry, you go ahead.
I'm sorry, that just reminded me about that.
The same way to me about that, because Tony can just go to sleep. I'm like, how did he fall asleep that fast? You know,
it's a military thing.
Like,
I don't know if that's what it is. Now I wonder, do you love me, Travis? Like I
love you, baby, but please understand.
Apparently, it's not bothering him. Like
exactly.
But see,
come on, like you're supposed to not. You're supposed to be like, you know what? This is really bothering me. I'm not going to sleep that well. I'm going to talk a little bit.
No, I'm saying what people don't know is Travis and I wake up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and we talking. So we go to sleep early, but we are up early. That's that military in us. Yeah. So it's not a disrespect thing. It's habitual.
Well, clearly, or sleep a little longer.
That's it.
And you guys, how about you guys?
I guess on the modeling thing, I grew up, even though my parents were married, they separated when I was really early. So it was just me and my mom. And for me, it was always about me and a lot of love. And then a little older, I moved in with my mother and my grandmother. And so I got double the love. So in past relationships in the beginning of our marriage, it was, okay, I'm complaining a lot because I don't understand why you can't love me like these women love me. What's wrong? And honestly, that was the model I had to go with it. And it took singles counseling, men's counseling, couples counseling, and a lot of struggle for me to understand it's not about me. Even though I still struggle with that because I still think it is, but I'm learning otherwise. So for me, it was a lot of love, and it was just that. So it wasn't a lot of conflict resolution because I grew up also with educators and there was active listening. So it was very calm, very loving, very nurturing. This is what you did wrong and how we can do better. Okay, cool, let's go. And that's how I grew up.
And it was so funny because we always laugh about this because we talk about the T.D. Jakes sermon, The Favor Factor. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it's in The Favor Factor, but anyway, he in this whole series, I think he talks about when you're a gallon person and you're trying to love a pint person and vice versa. They may be giving you everything they got and it'll never be enough because you know, your expectations are way up here. So that's what, you know, we already talked about that part of the other evenings when we were talking. It was a lot for me to get used to, but for me, in my childhood, I've never wanted to model what I observed in my childhood. So to me, the people around me had a habit of saying things and then they would come back like the next day, like they didn't say these hurtful things. And it was just like nothing ever happened. And I'm sitting there like, you just said all these hateful things to me yesterday. I'm not really cool with you today, you know? Mm-hmm. And my sister is really still that way. Mm-hmm. But I think she's matured in it and she doesn't do it as often until she gets mad. But I grew up in that environment and I knew I never wanted to model that. I knew that, and because of that, I'm very careful about, I'm not going to have a conversation when I'm up here because I want to make sure I don't say anything that I have to go back and revisit or apologize or try to take back, because I've learned over time that you really can't take it back because the sting of those words is still going to be there. And so that was a really big lesson for me. So I would say that made me probably try a little harder to make sure I wasn't that way. But I think when we started our relationship, he still tells me, well, when you said this, I thought, you know, because I'm chop sometimes. That's his definition, you know.
That delivery can be very direct, and for a sensitive man who grew up with a lot of love can be kind of harsh. Oh my God, you say that to me?
I understand the struggle, Gary.
In our relationship, he was like, do you really love me? And I was like,
you don't even like me. Jeez.
Like you like me. And I was like, seriously. And that was definitely, it's probably still a little bit of a challenge for him. It's
a lot better, but it goes back to what you said. It's definitely shaped by our childhood, because in my world, it was all about cute little Tony.
It still is. It still is.
And he even said cute little Tony. It's all about cute little Tony. They still call you that, cute little Tony? Where cute little Tony at?
I understood. Once I met his mom, I totally got it, you know. And once him and his mom came to Thanksgiving with my family, and him and his mom were like,
okay,
wow, finally, like it clicked. I understand. But once just being around his mom, I mean, she loves me. And I think she loves me more now than she loves Tony. But that's a story for another day. But no, just kidding. But I just think watching her and observing her and feeling how she loves, that would truly make him a much different person than I am today. So yeah. I have a lot more understanding for that now. But I think I can also tell him nicely that, you know, hey, you're being a little much right now, you know, in a nice way, and he doesn't get offended. But I know sometimes, you know,
we're getting better.
We're getting much better, much better. But I definitely know that we're way better than we were.
Good, good.
I think we're.
I'm like, who said it earlier? I didn't think we were gonna make it. Yeah, I didn't think we were gonna make it.
Now look at you. With cute little Tony.
But I'll say this. I'm with Sherry. I love my parents individually, but collectively, it was rough. It was rough on many points. My parents got divorced when I was 21 or 22, and it wasn't pretty. I heard the words that were said, and even, you know, growing up, I'm the son of a two-tour Vietnam Army drill sergeant, and he treated the home like he treated the base. Didn't matter who you were, he said what he said, and that's what he meant. Not to say he was just super rigid. Like, he taught me a lot of stuff. All the good things you were enjoying here in this house.
Like the doomsday prepping I told y'all about last week.
The doomsday prepping, all the little handy maintenance stuff. Because a lot of guys just don't have that. So, but as far as collective in their marriage, I've seen them happy together a good bit of time, but I knew the way they argued, I didn't want that for me and my wife and my life. They didn't fight fair. And when some of the things that were said were hurtful, and my dad told me, make sure you find a tall woman because you don't want to have short kids. And I'm like,
why is this stuff always going back to the children? You keep wanting to have left-handed.
Well, let me finish. So, but it was things like that. And, you know, you got to tell your woman how to drive. And, you know, if they were in the car driving, the direction given, you know how it is when somebody's trying to give the other directions while they're driving. It was shut it down time in the car, and you better not say nothing from the backseat, kids. So, I do have a little bit of that when Tamika is driving. Like, yo, where you going? You can go this way faster, you know, but I don't say or treat it or do it anywhere near how it was done before. So I don't bring that. But I know I was not going to be a yeller, a screamer. I'm gonna tear this house up so you understand I'm mad kind of person. First off, I'm too doggone big, and if she ever called the police on me, I'm going to jail, even if I didn't do nothing. So that's it's just the reality of the situation now, and I'm cognizant of that even in my other interactions. I don't get mad with folks, you know, because if anybody ever says I hit them and they on the ground, You big enough, you probably did. Hey, I know, I recognize those things, but I just knew what I grew up with. I didn't want that for my life.
So you meeting my parents and knowing how I communicate, did that make any sense to you? Did you see where?
Absolutely.
You did. Okay. Would you like to elaborate on that?
I'm gonna let you elaborate on that. You talk about your parents.
Okay, so
they love me.
Anyway, they love me too. Why you say it like that? Like they love me, they don't love you. But anyway, so my parents are still married. So I came from a 2-parent household, but they have very different personalities. My mother is a firecracker. She ain't about to let nothing go. She is the blow it up, and she might do it again. And my dad very much so is the one that'll walk away, and my mother would be on his heels still making her point. And so they've always had that kind of, when they argue, that's how they argue. And nothing really got resolved. I've never seen anything really resolved. I think I just eventually saw things cooled off, but nothing really got resolved. I didn't like it in particular. As they've gotten older, they still have disagreements, but it's not as bad as it was before when I was younger. But they still don't seem to kind of like resolve anything. If anything, they just kind of vent their frustration in the moment, or at least my mom does. My dad takes more of the approach of just pray for me. Like that's his line. Anytime I'll be like, Dad, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. All right, well, just pray for me. Like he's just trying to make it through. And it's kind of, it makes me a little sad because no one wants to kind of have that sort of relationship with your partner, your life partner, where you're just kind of existing. And no doubt, I know my parents love each other. But I do know there are things about each other I'm sure that they just don't like. And when those things come up, they just don't handle them well. My parents' issues aren't really big issues. It's really the way that they communicate and listen to each other. And I think they have done it wrong for so long that they're not that interested in making it better. They just kind of built their life around it. And but when they're good, they're good. They can sit and talk and chat and laugh about things, but when it comes to disagreements, they don't handle those things well, which I knew I didn't want. And I'm thankful that Travis isn't the type that yells and slams doors and things, because that doesn't work for me either. And I didn't, growing up seeing that, I knew I didn't want that, and that's just noisy, and I don't like that. And
you got to pay to get stuff fixed.
yeah. So I didn't want to kind of go through that kind of thing. So one of the things that I remember telling myself, or just kind of, and I might have even told one of them, is that I learned a lot about what I didn't want in my marriage because of my parents. And it may sound bad, and I'm not saying it from a bad perspective. I'm just saying it from what it is. I think we all look at different things, and we can take the good from it, and we can take the bad from it. Now, there are some good from my parents' marriage that absolutely I could take, but there are also things that are obvious that I knew I did not want for my marriage. And so when it came to interacting and communicating, and if we're having disagreements, we were going to resolve them. Or even in the moment, if we express ourselves and it's still somewhat of a, I don't get it, we can agree to disagree in that moment. And then over time, because believe it or not, you can have the same argument over and over. Like you can. And then sometimes at a certain moment, maybe about that 5th time, it's like, oh, now I get it. Which leaves the other person, I was telling you this 5 years ago. We've had the same argument 5 years ago. But it just kind of takes time sometimes to kind of figure that out, or hear each other and be open to hearing it, and actually understanding it, because we don't always kind of hear and understand it. And I would say with meeting your mom is very much so a bottom line person and to the point, land the plane kind of person. And I've enjoyed that about her. And so I could see how you would do that. But Travis has this thing where I think where I mentioned about the pregnant pause thing is that he's about to articulate something, and when these hands go up like this, I think it's an indicator. I've learned to understand that this is an indicator that there are going to be pauses and I need to shut up. until he finished. Because anytime these hands go up like this, it's going to be very measured, and I need to listen until he's finished.
America. I'm going to tell you.
He Barack Obama's me. He Barack Obama's me. But I've learned over time, because I didn't know, and I would jump right on in. But I've learned when these hands go up, I need to. Okay, Tamika, we're gonna sit and we're gonna listen to what else he has to say.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very good.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the kind of communicators we are, kind of what we've learned from our childhood and how we've seen arguments and disagreements modeled, what tools have you all used or techniques to resolve the arguments or disagreements that may arise, that may come up? I mean, there are plenty of resources out there, whether it is through counseling, there are books, there are mentors, like all these different things that are available to us. What have been some of the things you have learned or you've taken advantage of to kind of help you resolve or get better at fighting fair? And I'll start with Soraya and Pat.
Yeah, well, I'll start again. So for me, I know there's so many tools. Patrick mentioned the marriage counselors and of course the Bible and so many books. But for me, the book that make me understand it better and click, even though of course I'm working on it still, is Love and Respect from Dr. Emerson. I forgot his last name, but he talked about how wife we want to have love and how husband want to have respect. And if you don't feel love, you will not be showing respect. And if the husband doesn't feel respected, he will not show love. So it's like the cycle. Yeah. So you talk about it, how we want to have our own way. So they explain all the perspectives. And I was like, like it just clicked. Obviously, it's not something that is going to happen overnight. And I'm going to be perfect and stay quiet and, just kind of like let him think about it and so have the solution immediately. But that gave me so much perspective, and I feel because of that book I have been better, so yeah, I will recommend it to everyone, and I have actually recommended to newlyweds and everyone, like even to my parents. It's never too late.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I already told you guys about the whole timeout concept. Sarai shared that book with me. I read it, cover to cover, to have a better understanding and have an understanding of what she goes through. Mm-hmm. I think, and also I'm very intentional with my prayers. I say, Lord, help me understand this woman. Give me her perspective. Because honestly, sometimes I don't really want to do things because I don't want to feel like she's changing me, right? And I'm not in control of my own ship.
Yeah.
But through prayer and through reading Proverbs over and over, Ephesians over and over, I'm learning more and more perspective. I'm learning more to listen.
Yeah.
Like you guys mentioned, with the 2 ears and the 1 mouth, listening more, and just kind of, not having that self-restraint. And I think with time, it's just going to get better. But the biggest thing is just being intentional with it. She knows that I'm trying my best.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Good.
I'm going to jump in real quick.
Okay.
So, first off, when we actually went to a marriage conference in Tennessee, here in Atlanta, then down in Tampa, through a group called Family Life, and it's called Weekend to Remember. Mm-hmm. And I recommend that for everybody who is watching this, who's on the panel, to find once we open back up and it's safe to go to do these weekends, to do it, because there were some concepts that were taught there that, one, your spouse is not your enemy. Mm-hmm. And when you're thinking about resolving a conflict with an enemy versus your spouse, you do things completely different, because I know this woman has my best interests at heart, and whatever has happened wasn't done intentionally to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
And that when I think of how we're going to resolve this or think about why I'm feeling the way I am, I just know that we have to, one, be focused on oneness, and whatever we're going to do, whatever we're going to say, is that drawing us closer together, or is it going to make us drift further apart?
Yeah.
You know, those are really the only two directions you can be going in this thing of marriage. You're either getting closer or you're getting further apart. And, you know, it's incremental. Mm-hmm. You can be taking 5 steps forward to close, and then you say something and it's a step back. Mm-hmm. But that going to those conferences, and it's a, you know, 2-day, 2.5-day conference. You got to work at marriage. And I'm pretty sure everyone came in with an expectation that was quickly dashed as to how things are going to go and how they're going to flow. Mm-hmm. Like Pat said, you don't want to lose a little bit of yourself, but actually you're not losing a little bit of yourself. You're actually gaining a bit of her. Mm-hmm. And finding tools to continually work on your marriage and study and learn it's truly one of those conflict resolution builders for me, to understand that, one, I know intimate secrets about my spouse, about how she grew up, about the things she is insecure about. And I know those things are off limits. Mm-hmm. I will never, ever, ever bring them up or use them in a way to hurt her, mm-hmm. ever. And I stand on them and I forget about them. And I know that, man, I got this bomb right here, and it might feel good for a second, but I know the damage it will do as far as moving us apart. Because again, you can't unring the bell once you've rung it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you mentioning family life. So that was one of the first things that kind of introduced us into some sort of help and tools. And we went to that conference because we were in a rough patch in our marriage. And so we needed something. And so we went there, and you have a workbook. And so you're working through these assignments and things like that. So it kind of is showing you a healthy, and he's going to grab the book.
Go ahead. Continue.
You kind of working through the assignments and things like that. So it was something that something we had to do together and actually have conversations that we probably weren't having before, especially being new in marriage. You're still figuring out how to communicate and how to be vulnerable with each other as well. You know, you can love each other and you can date and all that kind of stuff, but when you get this on the job training and you're having to expose yourself in ways that you may not want to, it can be uncomfortable, or it might be an area like, I don't want to discuss that. And that could be the root of some issues that you're having. So I think the conference was good in that sense, of kind of forcing us to have conversations that we probably wouldn't have talked about, and give us some guardrails on how to address them, even considering ourselves, kind of some self-reflecting. So that was good. We've also taken advantage of marriage counseling, separate marriage counseling, mm-hmm. before, which has been helpful as well. And books, like there've been a couple books that I've read. And even with COVID going on, and at the beginning of COVID, many people were like, we don't know how many people are gonna stay married now that they got to be in the house with each other this long. And so we don't necessarily have that issue, but it does make me miss kind of some of the things we could be doing to continue to grow and cultivate in our marriage. Because we would be out probably. We might be a part of some kind of group or something, and we don't have that connection anymore. So I think we kind of slacking in that area a little bit. And so I think we've kind of taken advantage of a couple of different things. Those are things we've used as far as resources. Is that landing the plane enough?
Yeah.
He told me to land the plane, y'all. Anyway, Danny, Latanya, how about you guys?
So we went through this program. As she said earlier, the first 2 years were very, very tough. We didn't think we were going to make it. And matter of fact, I remember going down to Bishop, at our church, and I was like, Bishop, I don't think we're going to make it. And he encouraged us to go to counseling at our church. And this was, of course, 10 years ago. And they had a program called Radical Love. And it was about 12 or 13 weeks. And Travis kind of hit it on this, but one of the things they tell you in there at the very beginning and all throughout, your spouse is not your problem. And we learned that very early on, and all the issues that we've had and experienced, they were a result of our childhood and our experiences. And one of the things that they teach you in there is a tool called mirroring. And mirroring is basically where you come and you tell your spouse, hey, it's now a good time. And if they say no, then supposedly your spouse will let you know when is a good time. But usually, we not, because we went through the program, we know this is a time to listen. And it's a time to not only listen, but you repeat what you hear, and then it kind of starts off with, do you remember when? And then the person will say, I remember when. And then, you start kind of listening, but then repeating, and you're listening for those feeling words, and, like hurt, pain, what have you, disappointed, discouraged, and you repeat those words and you say how they felt. And then what you have to do is you remember a time, not including your spouse, it's usually probably either at home or growing up or, at work, where you felt the same way, and it kind of gives you, you're trying to explain that what your spouse is feeling at that time. Now, I know sometimes I remember when we first started, like, I would kind of describe, what I felt, and she'd be like, no, that's not it. That's not it. So with practice and everything, you start to really, really try to resonate and try to, because of course, you're thinking about your spouse, but you're trying to describe that you understand the pain that they're going through by providing an example. And it could be somebody that treated you the same way, or you treated someone that same way. And then a lot of times mirroring is a good thing too. If you did something that, your spouse really appreciated you for doing it, and they didn't have the time to thank you, say, wait, when you did this, I felt appreciated, I felt loved, and then you have to still use an example where you felt the same way. So Radical Love, it saved our lives, I believe. It saved our marriage. And we went through it again last year during the pandemic. It was virtual, but it was definitely a good experience.
That's good. We might have to write that down.
Yeah, Radical Love.
I remember hearing that. I remember hearing of Radical Love. Thank you. Thank you. And LaTanya?
I think that's probably the biggest tool that we've used. We've also been to counseling before we did Radical Love, and kind of in between. We have marriage mentors at our church, an older couple. We kind of try to visit with them on a regular basis. We've read books together. We try to do devotionals. We try to do those on a regular basis. And fasting and prayer is probably the biggest thing.
Great. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Good stuff. Tony and Sherry?
I guess for me, it's been a few things over the years. I guess individually, for me, it was prior to our marriage, individual counseling, marriage counseling, group counseling, that kind of planted some seeds that I was able to go back and implement, like the active listening, what you was talking about, which was really good. But for me, probably after, I want to say maybe 4 years of marriage, we were really struggling, and a great ours introduced us to Weekend to Remember. So
who might that be?
That was the first. No, right? So thanks to you guys of introducing us to that. That was the first tools that helped us collectively, and the seed was planted. It still was a struggle a little bit after that for us, but I do agree that was very instrumental in teaching us to work through our issues versus venting our issues. So that was big for me.
And I I agree that conference was probably had the most impact.
Great.
And it probably it might sound weird to people on the call, but Tony ended up getting sick right after we went to that conference.
Yeah.
So when you find yourself in a new state, you know, pretty much by yourselves, you know, you got all your friends at home, and we're in Texas, and we know we're going to be there for a while. So we didn't have anything but time during that time. So we were just going to the hospital and back. Yeah. So we had lots of time to talk through our issues. As a matter of fact, right before we got ready to go out there, we were in this huge argument. It was pretty much it. It was interesting because, like I said, I was at that point where I was like, you know, I'm done. Yeah. And but we had a chance to talk through all of that. But I don't know that if we hadn't been there like that with no other distractions, we didn't have any family out there. It was just us. So we talked a lot while we were there. So I think that it was during that time that, well, you know, when you are having arguments or disagreements with your spouse, you know, nobody ever thinks about your spouse getting sick and maybe they might not be here. Because that, to me, once you get to that point and you're dealing with that, everything else is. Yeah. So that made us put everything in perspective as a whole. It was just like, you know what, it's not that serious. And I think we still are kind of that way. It's like, it's not that serious. So something that would have been bad really ended up having a very positive impact on us in our marriage.
Yeah, life circumstances, that's something we're going to cover because our next week we're going to be talking about intimacy, being naked and unashamed. And we're going to talk about some of the life experiences that changes our perspective, that grows that intimacy, whether it's through circumstance, whether it's through intentional deeds. Like, that is absolutely, when life happens, it can draw you together or it can pull you apart. And you are bound, as long as you are continuing to live and have breath in your body, sure enough, there will be things that come up that will either draw you together or pull you apart. So we are going to talk a little bit about that on next week. But Michael and Cashmere, you guys are going to wrap us up. So you guys let us know. Let's get ready. They've been putting it down. They've been closing out church the last couple times. What you got for us? What you got?
Well, I have a combination of some things. Honestly, we do some traditional things and some probably not so traditional things. So as everyone's kind of touched on, marriage counseling, definitely a big thing for us. We've gone to an organization out here called Marriage Works. And they had a lot of good, they have different levels and topics in which they cover. But one thing that kind of resonated with us is a conversation piece. And so a lot of times you find yourself, you know, wanting to be heard. And, you know, there's difficulties, whether it's I'm waiting to interject and tell you what I feel. Hold on, wait a minute. Or, you know, there's just different things. So a conversation piece for us, it could be any kind of tangible item you have. But we have a spoon in which, you know, when that spoon comes out, it's like, all right, let's talk. Obviously, we need to take turns. And so the important part about it is when you have the piece, you can speak. Yeah. And the other person is to listen. And you listen for understanding. So then that way, when it's your turn to speak, you start your statement with, so if I'm understanding you correctly, this is how you feel. And here's how I feel about it. And I think that just even without the actual tangible item, it's just so important to actually take the time to hear out what the other person is saying, so that you can really grasp. When you take that pause and you listen, you're able to grasp what it is that they're trying to really tell you, not what you are hearing. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, and then like I said, that one works a lot for us, being able to, like I said, hold the spoon, and then we usually put a time limit on it too. We'll say, okay, you get a minute or whatever, and then we'll go back and forth. Okay, now I got the spoon and I have to listen. So that was a good one. The non-traditional, every year I try something different. And Mary, I'll figure out a new thing. I'll just try, let me try something else. You know. Before this year, previously, my thing was, I would always say, I'll see you in the morning. If we would have a conflict, I may stop and say, you know what, I'll see you in the morning. And that was just my way of saying, we can argue, but guess what? In the morning, I'm going to be here. You're going to wake up, you're going to see me. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to see you. So whatever you're mad about, I'm going to be here in the morning. So is it worth it to really go? So now this year, our thing has been who smiles first. So we may be in a little bit of a disagreement. She may be upset, I may be upset. And you know, like someone has said earlier, we both, well, she does way better than I do, being able to be quiet for 2-3 days. So I can't take that, and I just can't. I can't do it. So my thing this year has been, when she goes into it, I'm not speaking, and sometimes I'll do it, but mine's more like an hour. So but I'm not speaking to you. I may talk around her. I may do something. If she cracks a smile, I'm like, you smile. It's over. You can't. You're upset with me because you're I said or I did. So now that's the thing this time is who smiled first. If you smile, you gotta drop the attitude, because like we mentioned earlier, a lot of times it's a choice to continue the surface part of your upsetness, if you will. A lot of times you can choose to be, I'm just gonna be mad right now. But if you smile, I'm like, look, we can talk now because you smile, I smile, I love you, you love me, let's drop it and let's have some cheesecake and just sit and talk, because it's not that deep. So that's the tool that I feel like that's really, really worked more than anything non-traditional that we tried in the past. Just simply smiling and remembering, all right, this ain't a big deal.
Yeah. It doesn't matter in 5 years, it doesn't matter today.
That was the other, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, it ain't gonna matter. It don't matter that big of a deal right now.
Yeah. Perspective, having a little bit of fun. I can appreciate that. I really love that. Well, I think we've had a great conversation. We've talked about our communication styles. We've talked about our childhood. We've talked about the tools that we have available to us and how it's helped us. And I hope to everybody that is watching that this has helped you as well. So thank you so much for joining us again for another week of our Love and Relationship series. Meet us back here next Thursday for our last session, in which we will talk about being naked and unashamed intimacy. And it is going to be a live session. So we hope you'll join us back here again next Thursday. Thank you all and have a good night. Bye-bye.